All right. Welcome to another edition of Big Ten Spotlight. He is Deon Thomas, the all-time leading scorer in Illinois Fighting Illini history. I am Aaron York, and I am the all-time leader in TikToks about Penn State basketball. And let's get right to it, Deon. The Ohio State Buckeyes, they lost to Wisconsin. Wisconsin finally snapping that 4-game losing streak, and they look to be in a tailspin. They pull out of it, and what happens? Ohio State fires head coach Chris Holtmann. This is going to be the second straight year without an NCAA tournament appearance, barring a miracle run in the Big Ten tournament. And although he had some success in bringing the Buckeyes to the tournament, this is clearly a program that sees itself as a tournament team, not just an occasional tournament team, but a tournament team every year. And I have mixed feelings about it because of what it looked like Holtmann was building with the young players he had in the starting lineup. But what do you think about this move? Did this come as a big surprise, or did you see this coming with the way they were in this big time losing skid since the new year?
I'll say, first of all, let me start off by saying I am a big fan of Chris Holtmann. He has done not just a tremendous job at Ohio State, did a great job, I believe, Butler before that.
Yeah.
He is a well-established coach. But this is the business of winning basketball games. This is and now with the, all of the other things that come along with it, making sure getting your NIL right, being a development officer myself, I understand that and how it works and how it can affect things coming into as far as donations and dollars and donors and fans of the program. So I look at it differently than I did as a player. As a coach, I'm sure Coach Holtmann, and I know, as I mentioned before, I'm a fan of the hard work that he has done to get to this point where, this team was really good a few years ago. Tournament team multiple times a few years ago. He was coach of the year in the Big Ten. This is not the last time you'll see Coach Chris Holtmann, but I will say, the way this team has been struggling this year, if you're the athletic director, you have to begin to look at ways to improve the program. I mean, if you think about it, when Ohio State was having some difficulties in football, I mean, there was a conversation that came up if they were going to keep the football coach. Ohio State is a program, whether it's football, basketball, or any of the other sports, they are expected to win. You're expected to be in every battle, every Big Ten battle. You're expected to be in the NCAA tournament. They've had some good wins this year, wins over UCLA, West Virginia. But when you come down to it and you struggled the way they have this year, and they've lost, 5 or 6 in a row?
They've lost 9 of their last 11. 9 of their last 11.
Yeah, you have to begin to look at either the locker room is no longer responding to the coach. And if that's the case, you have to start looking at changing some things up. So it's unfortunate. But I had one of my mentors when I was in this coaching business tell me, Deon, if you get into this, understand you're in the business where they hire you to fire you. And that's exactly, unfortunately, where Coach Holtmann was caught up. As you mentioned, this will be the second straight year that they will not, barring a winning of the Big Ten tournament, make it to the NCAA tournament. So, you have to start looking at fixes. You have to start thinking now in this year of NIL of which players you want to retain and all of those things. And prospective players that are going to hit the transfer portal, not to mention the freshmen you have coming in and recruiting. So, yeah, I mean, sad day for Coach Holtmann, his family, but I know he'll hit the ground running wherever he goes. Just like I said, great man, great coach, has done a tremendous job previously to these last 2 years. But, that's the nature of this beast, man. You don't win, you don't stay.
Yeah, I thought of Chris Holtmann as one of the more underrated coaches in the conference. He obviously hasn't been underrated the last couple seasons, but one of the reasons I have mixed feelings about this, and I understand that Ohio State has higher standards than what they've been doing the last 2 seasons, 5-15 in the conference last year. They are 4-10 this year. Mm-hmm. But it's that starting lineup where they are building a young core. They have 4 sophomores in the starting lineup, with Bruce Thornton and Roddy Gale making big strides this year. Felix Okpara looks like, I think he is one of the more underrated big men. He's a great shot blocker that they can build their defense around. And then you have Evan Mahaffey, who I saw at Penn State last year, and he's really starting to score the ball a lot better. He's getting a lot better as an offensive player. So I like what I've seen out of him for growth. The only veteran they have out in the starting lineup is Jamison Battle. So it's going to be interesting.
Who's a big piece, and he's injured.
Yeah.
So,
that's hurt them a lot because he's been a big 3-point shooter for them, not just, and one of the best shooters in the conference when he is healthy. So, they might be taking a step back to take a step forward, because this is a team that, if all those guys stay and they spend another year together as juniors, this could certainly be a tournament team, and even a very good tournament team next year. But Ohio State decided it's not good enough. And what really hurt Holtmann, I thought, was he did make his first 5 years, including 2020 when they were projected to make the tournament, the first 5 years, he did make the NCAA tournament. The problem was he never made the Sweet 16 at Ohio State, which he did accomplish his last season at Butler. And you go back to that year 2021 when they were the 2 seed, and when you're the 2 seed, you're supposed to make the Sweet 16. And what happens? That was his only time at Ohio State that he lost in the first round. And then when he was a lower seed, he was able to advance past the first round, but he loses that game to Oral Roberts. Very memorable game with Max Asmus going off. And that was really his one shot to do something special. That was when he had his best team. And ironically, it's the team that doesn't even win a game in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but you can't look at it like that. I mean, matchups matter. And this is one of those things. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure the odds makers did have them doing some big things. But, man, the NCAA tournament is hard. And this is what I think a lot of people think, oh, man, and some of our Illini fans as well. Oh, we should be there. We should be winning all the time. We allow love and passion to get in the way of truly understanding what type of beast that NCAA tournament is. I mean, man, you have no time really to prep or prepare. You're going over, and it's kind of game time prepping for the other team. So you really don't know who you're playing. It's not like when you're playing in your conference, and it depends. Who's the hot team that night? If they're making shots and things have happened, look at Purdue last year. I mean, these things don't, are very difficult. Not trying to take the slack off of Chris Holtmann at all. But it's a hard thing to do to try to get to that tournament. I mean, anytime you get and trust me, I know I never made it past the second round. And there were a couple of years we were projected to go past the second round. And it just, you run into teams that are hot shooting, or a team that puts together a great game plan and executes better than you do, or your team that night. And, man, then you're coming home and it hurts. It sucks, as you can still hear the pain in my voice from us losing to Georgetown my senior year. I still feel it all of these years later. But no, I just so we can, move on. I wonder who they're going to, if they're going to move Diebler into that, who was the associate head coach, and let him finish out the year, or what the thoughts are from up top over at The Ohio State University. So we'll see. But, Chris Holtmann will land on his feet, and he and his family are going to be fine because he's a heck of a coach.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. That's how coaches are judged. Unfortunately, it is a brutal one-game elimination. You only get 40 minutes to either do or die. And you're right. It could be any game can be the downfall. And certainly that Oral Roberts team was better than they were billed. That's why the game was so close and exciting. That's why Oral Roberts pulled it out. And it's hard for the committee to judge these mid-major teams and give them, just put a number besides their name and say, well, that's what they are, when they are playing totally different competition. So no one really knows. But at the same time, that's how coaches get judged. And maybe if Holtmann had gone farther, if maybe he gets a Sweet 16 and beyond, maybe he gets a little bit of a longer leash here with this young team that he's coaching now. So let's move on. Let's talk about your Fighting Illini. Played a really exciting game on Saturday. They did not come out on the winning end they were on the road against a Michigan State team that needed it more, but then they bounced back and they absolutely hammer Michigan. Terrence Shannon Jr. really rounding into form, playing two of his best games of the season. His three-point shot was going in against Michigan, and I said, if he's shooting like that, we know about how Terrence Shannon Jr. can get to the basket and just blow by opponents with his speed, but if he can hit shots like that, it's just over. There's just no chance for opponents. So that was a nice get-right game for Illinois after a tough loss. And, what did you – what was your reaction to seeing the Illini play?
I'll say this. I haven't had, as you've mentioned, I have the blessing, I should say that, the blessing and to cover Illinois when I'm watching them, and when I'm broadcasting games. I felt really good about what I saw last night, especially after what happened in the debacle up in East Lansing. As you mentioned, Michigan State needed that game. If you look at it in a way to kind of cement another opportunity for Tom Izzo, who is I can't say enough good things about the coach and the person that Tom Izzo is. To make, I think this will be the 25th year in a row if they make the NCAA tournament, which is, if not unprecedented, is doggone near way up there, man. I mean, he's done a tremendous job over a long time. And Illinois jumped out on them pretty much. It seemed like they were in control. I mean, even going into the second half, they were up 8 points, I think, with 6 minutes left. Yeah. And Michigan State stormed back to get the win. As you mentioned, Terrence Shannon had a really good game in that game, finished the game with 28 points, I believe it was. Coleman Hawkins played well, but they just couldn't close it out. And one of the biggest discussions that's been going on around in Champaign is got to get back tougher. I mean, Brad Underwood even went so far in the media to use the word soft when he described that game against Michigan State because of the number of and ones that they gave up. You don't normally want to hear a coach describe his team in that manner or the way they played in that manner. But he did, and he challenged them, and they responded. Now, of course, Michigan isn't a great team. They're struggling and have been struggling. But my high school coach, Bob Hambrick, always told us if you're supposed to beat somebody, you make sure you beat them twice as bad as you're supposed to beat them. So you really put it on them. And that was what they did. I mean, Vegas, had, I think, Illinois 14, 15, 16 point favorites.
Yeah, it was a big number.
And they pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
With a 97-68 win over Michigan last night in Champaign. I will say this. I was so glad to see my guy, Juwan Howard. We've known each other since high school. He looked good, man, after a near-death experience and having to have the heart surgery. So it was good to see him in person this time on the sideline. But, I digress and get back to the game and what we're supposed to be talking about. You mentioned Terrence Shannon's 31 points. But the game that Coleman Hawkins played, the all-around game of Coleman Hawkins, AA was amazing. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, only 1 turnover, knocked down some big threes. I think it was 50% from three. You know, he played and orchestrated the team. Michigan switched to some zones at that time during the game, but just the ball movement from Illinois when they were in that zone, Coleman, you know, flashing inside and outside, just creating opportunities for others, knocking down threes. His defense, mainly in the second half. I mean, second half more so than the first half. You know, Terrace Reed was giving them work in the first half and had 12 points at the end of the first half, 1 point in the second half. And a large portion of that was with Coleman defending him. Coleman had a couple of block shots as well in that game. But the reemergence also of Quincy Guerre had not played really well, I'll say the last 2 games. And when he's playing well, this puts Illinois on a different level. I mean, because of his ability to rebound the basketball, to defend pretty much all 5 positions on the court, you know, at 6'8", 235, 240, somewhere around there, but did not miss a shot last night. Didn't miss a shot. But even more important, did a heck of a job on defense and then rebounded the ball, which is what he's known for since he's been at Illinois. 7 rebounds last night. So I love the bounce back from Illinois, the intensity on defense. They played with speed this time, unlike what they did. Michigan State pretty much controlled the tempo when they played up at East Lansing. Illinois did all of that thing and more last night. So it was good to see them bounce back and find themselves, especially on the defensive end again. Because, you know, there's a couple things in basketball that travels, meaning when you're on the road, you need to do these 2 things at a high rate in order to win. And that's in the Big Ten. That's in the NCAA tournament. You better have these things down pat. One is defend. The other is rebound. You know, I'm a big Tom Thibodeau fan. Bulls won a lot of games when they didn't have a lot of talent and they had a hurt Derrick Rose and all these other things because of those 2 things. Illinois has done that as well in this Brad Underwood tenure because of rebounding and defense, and they got back to it last night.
Yeah, it's awesome that you brought up Thibodeau because I am a big Knicks fan, another blue and orange team. So we're seeing that happen with the Knicks. They've become this hard-nosed team. They've also had to deal with injuries this season, and they're just grinding it out. And yeah, I mean, everyone in New York is super fired up about this Knicks team. We love Tom Thibodeau, the toughness that he's brought, and is a disciple of Jeff Van Gundy, who's the coach after Pat Riley when the Knicks had success in the 90s. So, yeah, I love that you brought up Thibodeau there. He is one of my favorite coaches in basketball. So
likewise.
So the Michigan State side of things, what I was really impressed with in that win was the way they finally played like a full 3-headed monster, the way they finally got great performance from AJ Hoggard, great performance by Malik Hall, and then Tyson Walker. He didn't need to break his back carrying this offense because the other 2 guys scored 20 points. And you saw a glimpse of what this offense could be as it's at the top of its potential. So that's something to look forward to for Michigan State. And they were able to get to the foul line. They scored a lot in the paint. They only shot about 8 3-point shots. They made 5 of them, so they were efficient, but they were getting into the lane. And that's why Brad Underwood got upset, because they're getting to the lane. They were drawing fouls and giving Illinois problems that way. So very impressive game for Michigan State. And yeah, we're getting to the time of mid-February where we're on bubble watch. We're seeing who's in, who's out. We're checking back on the bracketology sites to see if it changed after every game and who's last 4 in and who's first 4 out. And Michigan State, I'm surprised they're still down on the 9 line as I look at the ESPN projections, but I think they are on the rise with the way their offense is clicking. So I'm not too worried about Michigan State missing out. And they do have that big win against Baylor in Detroit back in December in their back pocket. So I think
this one over Illinois.
Yeah, so in this win over Illinois helped them a lot. This update apparently came after. This update was from Monday morning, so that should take that into account. I think Michigan State's going to be – I could see them getting up to a 7 or a 6, even if they can continue playing well. And then It's been the same way for a while. It's been 6 Big Ten teams in for the past few weeks, with the last 2 being, we know the obvious ones are Purdue and Wisconsin. Despite the losing streak, they have done plenty.
And Illinois, hold on, they got.
I was about to say Illinois.
They got us on the 4 line. Come on, Double A.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say Wisconsin, then Illinois, and Illinois looks like they can pass Wisconsin if. Wisconsin got the win over Ohio State, but with the way Ohio State's playing, I could still see Illinois passing Wisconsin. So that's going to be an interesting battle as we go down the stretch. Yeah. You can have your own little battle with Wisconsin and see who gets the higher seed there. Because it's all about jockeying for position, because it's as much madness as there is in March. The higher seed you are, the better chance you have of getting to that second weekend and even further. So every game is just so important, and seeding is so important in this giant tournament. And right, I was trying to say the bottom 2 teams, they've been hanging on to the either a 9 seed or a 10 seed. They've been going back and forth, Northwestern and Nebraska. And the reason they're kind of treading water here is because both those teams win at home, and both those teams have a lot of trouble on the road. And especially, Nebraska is to the totally extreme, because I believe they still won they've won every Big Ten home game. They've lost every Big Ten road game, no matter the opponent. And Northwestern is close. With
Northwestern.
Oh, well, except they won at my Nittany Lions, so I'm very upset about that. Yeah.
They haven't lost at home, though, so they've been
correct.
Really
good it is almost the same with them. Yeah, mm-hmm. And that's why they are just hanging on to those bottom seeds, and they've obviously picked up quality wins. They've both beaten Purdue. And they both have other big wins at home. Northwestern they both beat Michigan State as well. So, we'll see if one of those teams could move up a couple lines. And if they pick up a couple of road wins down the stretch.
They still got the Big Ten tournament. So you're right. Yeah. They can still climb. I mean, I still think, Wisconsin has an opportunity. I think they're not Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Minnesota. I think Minnesota has a chance. They have some quad 1 wins that they can still pick up. And then if they do well in the Big Ten tournament, they'll have an opportunity to win. But I agree with you. And I actually have to agree with Joe Lunardi as well, with Purdue being the right now overall number 1 seed. And that'd be great to have them in the Midwest. They got us, Illinois right now. Illinois is a 4 seed going south to Dallas, which isn't bad. We got a big following down in Texas, so it'd be good to be able to go where we would have some orange in the seats. But Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan State, I think those guys are all in, and Nebraska as well. But I think we also had Big Ten also has a chance to get 1 more in that Minnesota game. And you still can't count out Iowa. They can make a run in the Big Ten tournament, and that would pretty much, probably help themselves out. But, yeah, I would agree with you. And with those bubble teams, and they just got to do the work. They got to keep winning. The tough part about this is that they cannibalize one another in the Big Ten. So, you could have some, but they're not counted as bad losses either, unless you lose to Michigan, Ohio State, Maryland, or Rutgers. And I have to throw your Nittany Lions in there as well.
It's getting better. We're not that bad of a loss. We're not that bad of a loss anymore, but yeah,
I would agree.
I get it.
I would agree. I mean, it would be like it wouldn't be a quad 4 loss. It would be like a quad 3. But it would still be considered a tough loss for any of those teams up above them. So
100%.
Everyone has tough home games and they got some tough road games. But yeah, I think they got it spot on right now with who's on the bubble and who's the last 4 in and who's the last 4 out.
Yeah, and I think Minnesota, they flashed potential, but now they have a problem because Dawson Garcia got hurt on Sunday, and they blow a huge lead at Iowa. That was so painful for Minnesota fans because that was going to do wonders for their bubble resume, and They just let it slip away. So I think Iowa has a leg up on them. And then the other team we're watching is Maryland. Maryland and Iowa have a showdown tonight. And
Iowa needs to win that.
And it's no doubt. It'll be tough on the road. at Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland also desperate for wins, and Maryland they also lost a heartbreak over the weekend to Ohio State, where Maryland, they had two chances to take the lead on free throws, once in regulation and once in the first overtime. And Donta Scott and Julian Reese, they both go 0 for 2 at the line in separate instances. So that is just brutal for the Terps. They're going to be desperate to get back on track. But like you said, Iowa also needs to keep that momentum going from that huge comeback win they had against Minnesota. And then, I'm not ready to give up on Indiana. I think Indiana fans have had it with Indiana. They just got destroyed by Purdue, but it's at Purdue. What are you going to do? It's not a game you were really counting your chickens with anyway. So
exactly.
Indiana, they're still 14-10. They're still 6-7. Here's what I think. If Indiana they have Northwestern at home and Nebraska at home, their next two games. What do we just say about those two teams? They both don't win on the road. If Indiana can win those two games at Assembly Hall, then those are going to count as quality wins, even though those teams don't win on the road. They're still quality wins because of the wins they've gotten at home. So that's kind of a bubble hack that Indiana can pull here. They can get quality wins, even though the teams they're beating, they're beatable because they're in Assembly Hall. So if they can grab those two, then they get my Nittany Lions. Indiana can start making their resume look a little better. So that's someone to look out for. I feel like a lot of people have written off the Hoosiers, but with Khalil Ware healthy, avoided that injury scare in the final seconds against Ohio State. I think Indiana can maybe sneak back into the conversation, but it all comes down to these next two games.
They have some work to do. I agree with you, but they have some serious work to do. But again, when you're in the Big Ten, who knows? You have a chance because you're going to get quality wins when you win those games. But anytime you're on the road, you got to make sure that you don't trip up, and that's where they're going to be. Indiana could get back in there. You're 100% right, but we'll see. That's the beauty of college sports, man.
That is the beauty of college sports. And it's only going to get more intense. It's only going to get more exciting down the stretch. So stick with us here on Big Ten Spotlight down the stretch. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. He's at Deon Thomas 25 on X. I'm at Aaron P. York. And make sure you leave us a 5-star review on Apple, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can hit us up on social media. Go to Believe.com for this podcast and all the other ones from around the sports world as we inch closer to March Madness. It is going to be awesome. So on behalf of Deon Thomas, I'm Aaron York. Peace out. Enjoy the basketball. Can't wait.